All right, so we just finished up the big war. All right, the war between the four kings and the five kings. Abram comes to the rescue, rescues Lot, defeats the five most powerful kings headed up by Chedorlaomer, and is now kind of Abraham's like the most powerful nation on the earth at this point. Okay? And then we have something very interesting happen. This very mysterious dude shows up and he has fascinated people for centuries. Let's pick it up in verse 17. After his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet Abram at the valley of Shavah. Now it appears that the king of Sodom lived through the plunge into the pitiest of all possible pits, right? But he was no part of the rescue. He went back home, wanting to see if Abraham was successful, you know. Oh, my beloved people, I'm so glad you're back. What a great guy he was. Just another indicator of the wickedness of Sodom. Even their king was a loser. And now we have a pause because the story takes a stunning turn by introducing us to this character that just comes out of nowhere and then disappears back into history. Here in the middle of Canaanite territory, ungodly, one of the worst places in the world to live at this point, is this priest of the Most High God. That's peculiar, right? That amongst all this paganism, here is a guy who's not only a worshiper of the one true God, but a priest. There are just 3 passages in the whole Bible that mention him, yet he has sparked more conversations than just about any character over the centuries. The other day I was listening to a 4-hour podcast on Melchizedek while my wife was in the car. She told me I was crazy. Said this is awful. I was like, oh no, this is great. This mysterious dude named Melchizedek. So, first off, we have to start out with, what does the Bible actually say about Melchizedek? Lots of blanks here. We're going to be moving very quickly. Everyone get your pens out. Give your hand a good massage. And here we go. Verse 18. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And Abram gave him a tenth of everything. So, first off here, we get some vital information about who this guy is from his name. It carries very deep theological meaning. Number 1, Melchizedek means king of righteousness. That's simply what his name says. Now, there's some other guys like Heiser who will argue that it means something else, but Hebrews tells us what it means. We'll get to that here in a minute. Now, righteousness actually means that which is right and pleasing to God. So this guy was the king of stuff that is pleasing to God. So if his name is indicative at all of his character, he was a righteous dude. Now, this passage also tells us that he is the king of Salem. Now, again, there is an interesting word. Salem is an Assyrian word that means peace. So, for some, this means that Melchizedek is the king of peace. I mean, that's what Salem means. Now, the reality is that many who read this already see a pattern forming on the identity of this mysterious character. King of righteousness, king of peace. Man, that sounds real familiar. But folks, Salem is also a place in Canaan. We're very sure of that because of Psalm 76:2. His abode has been established in Salem, or in the Hebrew, Shalom. His dwelling place in Zion. Now, where is Zion? We all know what Zion is. There's a particular hill in the highlands of Judea that's called Zion, which makes it very clear that Melchizedek is the king of what would become Jerusalem. Now, just a little side note, Jerusalem is made up of two Hebrew words, Yeru, okay, which means city, and then Salem or Shalom in the Hebrew, meaning peace. Yeru Salem. I would remind you that there really are no nations at this time, mostly city-states. So Melchizedek was the king of the city-state of what would eventually become Jerusalem. Then Melchizedek does something very interesting. Letter D, Melchizedek served Abram bread and wine. Now, oh man, here's more. Now this starts ringing hyperlink bells in our heads, right? The Hebrew word for bread, by the way, we have to be careful. Remember, we're always dealing with translations. It is most often translated as bread, but it can also very well mean just food, a meal. Again, most often translated as bread, but very well could mean he just brought him a meal and some wine. You can just put that in your pipe and smoke it. Letter E. Melchizedek was a priest of God Most High. Now, we all know what a priest is. A priest is a go-between, a mediator between God and man. Now, I would have you note that Jewish priests, the Levitical ones in the line of Aaron, have not been created yet. Okay, we're in Genesis, we're not in Leviticus, Deuteronomy. Okay, we're not in Exodus, we're still in Genesis. Melchizedek is not a Jewish priest. They don't exist. So that means there are some people living on the earth at that time who knew of and served the God Most High. You know, sometimes we think that the Jews were the only ones. No. This tells you right here, there were others. Now, they were probably fairly small in size, these groups, but this guy was the king of a city who worshiped the God Most High. Now, how many? Have no idea. Where did they come from? Probably from the descendants of Shem. But again, Bible silent. Remember, the book is a Jewish book. We often forget that. Very, very Jewish. It just tells that part of the story. There are hundreds of thousands, millions of other people on the planet, and some of them follow God. That's kind of cool, right? Also, Melchizedek blesses Abram. He tells him, you did a good job in the fight. You know, obviously it was the right thing to do because God is blessing Abram through Melchizedek. Letter G, Melchizedek receives a tithe from Abram. Now that's interesting. A tithe, of course, is 10% of everything you have. It doesn't really tell us why Abraham gave the tithe. He just did. And that's all we know about the guy in this from this passage. That's it. Those are the facts. Just 3 verses. He shows up, does a few things, gone. But important enough to mention. But it's kind of weird. And quoting from Dr. Michael Heiser, one of my favorite theologians, if it's in the Bible and it's weird, it's important. Okay? We like to skip over the weird parts because it's hard for us to fit into our little box of what God does and how God should operate. Okay? But I like Heiser. If it's weird, it's important. He's also mentioned in Psalm 110. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, one, because he's mentioned, but here's the really interesting part of this. Psalm 110 is the most often quoted psalm in the New Testament. It's even quoted by Jesus himself. Now, Psalm 110 is a messianic psalm. It means it's talking about the Messiah that is to come, which we know on this side of the cross, it's talking about Jesus. Here are the first 4 verses of Psalm 110. Yahweh says to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. Yahweh sends forth from Zion your mighty scepter. rule in the midst of your enemies. Your people, okay, he's a ruler, will offer themselves freely on the day of your power in holy garments. From the womb of the morning, the dew of your youth will be yours. The Lord has sworn, Yahweh has sworn, that and will not change his mind. You, Messiah, are a priest after the order of Melchizedek. So what we have here is David telling us that the Messiah to come, he's going to be a king, his scepter, he's ruling, he has a people, and that this Messiah will also be a priest, a go-between between God and mankind. But not just any old run-of-the-mill priest. He's not going to be not going to be in the line of the Levites, not going to be in the line of Aaron. He's a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. So, letter H in your notes, Melchizedek was a king and priest, and the Messiah will also be a king and a priest. Again, you're seeing these, right? There's some connections here. Now, the last place Melchizedek is mentioned is in the book of Hebrews in the New Testament. Hebrews chapter 7, beginning in verse 1. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High, met Abram, returning from the slaughter of the kings, and blessed him. And to Abraham apportioned a tenth part of everything. He is first, by translation of his name, King of Righteousness. And then he is also King of Salem, that is, King of Peace. So we get no new information. We get a backup here, right? Just confirmation of what we've already discovered from Genesis chapter 14. There are a few little nuggets, however, in verse 3. Look at this. He is without father or mother or genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but resembling the Son of God, he continues a priest forever. And that's all we know about Melchizedek. So, there's a few more things. Melchizedek has no parents, apparently. He's without mother or father. J, he is eternal. Or at least what he does is eternal. And K, Melchizedek resembles Jesus, the Son of God. There you go. That's everything we know about Melchizedek. Let's pray. I'm kidding. Okay, so who is this guy? And I'm not kidding. You can find all kinds of ideas about who this guy is. Many ideas throughout the centuries. However, there are three main ideas about who Melchizedek is. If you look back in Hebrews chapter 7, verse 3, he is without father or mother or genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life. So maybe there are people out there who seem to be almost around forever, kind of like Latrell. She's just always lived here, right? She seems to be without beginning and without end. She just keeps right on going, and you just keep right on going, Latrell. Right? Well, there was someone like that in the Bible who lived a lot longer than Latrell. So some people think Melchizedek is Shem. Some people, now this would be, when I say some people, I mean Jews. If you look at the timeline of ages in the Bible, where did I hit the wrong button here? Where is that? Oh man, did I not put it in there? Okay, I'm very sorry. There should be. Okay. If you look at the ages of the people in the Bible, the genealogies that are given, especially the one in Genesis chapter 11, what you will notice if you do the math, and I had a little picture to show you, but what you will see is that Shem was still alive during the days of Abraham. 600 years old. It shows the ages and when they died. And if you do all the numbers and you add it all up, Shem was still alive in the days of Abraham. In fact, him and Abraham died around the same time. Okay? He would have seemed to have had no beginning and no end. This is the traditional Jewish interpretation. There's a decent possibility that Abraham knew Shem. Now, can you imagine being able to communicate with someone who was alive before the flood? That would be cool. I mean, that would be real cool.
Yeah, what about the deal that everybody was wiped out by the flood, though?
Well, yeah, but Shem was still on the boat. He's one of Noah's sons. One of Noah's sons. He's on the boat, right? Now, according to the ancient traditions recorded in the Targumim and the Talmud, those are Jewish commentaries. This is what they say. Shem survived the flood and received blessings from Noah. You remember that? He was the one that received the godly blessings. He was a righteous forebearer of Abraham, keeping alive the knowledge of Yahweh in a world that was slipping into idolatry. He was the one. The other two didn't get the blessing that Shem got. So, according to the Jews, this has got to be Shem, right? The next one is Melchizedek is Jesus. There are many in church world who believe that this is what is called a theophany or a Christophany. This is a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus himself in the flesh. And the reasons people draw this conclusion is because, well, he was the king of righteousness. Melchizedek was the king of peace. Well, who does that sound like? Kind of sounds like Jesus. He brought bread and wine. Well, dude, that's like connecting to Lord's Supper, right? It can mean just a meal. Okay? He had no beginning, no end. Well, that's Jesus, right? It even says that Melchizedek resembled the Son of God. Well, that's got to be Jesus. And on the other part of it, that language is often used when it says he resembles or is like the Son of God. It's used in Daniel. I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a Son of Man, who came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. Well, you do the study in there, you realize, well, that's Jesus. That's the second person of the Trinity. So he's resembles the Son of God. He's like a Son of Man. That's kind of the same, right? So this has to be Jesus, right? Third main is Melchizedek is just a dude. That's the theological language used by many theologians throughout the centuries. He's just a dude. He was simply a good man who believed in the God Most High, and he was used by the Holy Spirit to do certain things, and this led Moses to include him in the scriptures. The Holy Spirit is using Melchizedek to ultimately point us to Jesus. There is a similarity, but it's simply a pointing forward. Many who hold this definition of this will say he's kind of like Balaam. You remember Balaam? Balaam is kind of similar to Melchizedek. He just kind of shows up, does this extraordinary thing where apparently he has a direct line to God, does these crazy cool things, and then just disappears into history. Y'all know I like Dr. Arnold Fruchtenbaum. I use him a lot. This is his stance. This is an awful long quote. You'll see it in your paper there, but I just want to read through it. You can follow along there. I don't have it on the screen, or you can just listen, whatever you want to do. But he makes some good points. Let's hear what Dr. Fruchtenbaum has to say. Now, by the way, a Jewish biblical scholar, a believer, but Jewish in his background. While many have taught that Melchizedek was a pre-incarnate Christ, that simply cannot be. This was not a theophany because theophanies came and went. When we see him talking to Abraham, he shows up, talks to Abraham, and then he's gone. Right? We see that often in the scriptures. They appear, gave their proclamation, message, or commandment, and then disappeared. Theophanies never held an office here on earth. Here, Melchizedek holds two offices, that of king and that of priest. Again, he was not a theophany, or he was only a type, for several reasons. First, theophanies merely appear and disappear, not holding an earthly office like king or priest. Second, Hebrews 5:1, which begins listing several prerequisites for priesthood, make the point that a priest had to be human. The Messiah did not become human until the incarnation. So for Melchizedek to first be a priest, he first had to be human. Third, Hebrews states that he was like the Son of God, not that he was the Son of God. He was made like unto the Son of God, King James Version. Therefore, there is no biblical basis for making Melchizedek a theophany or the pre-incarnate Christ. Melchizedek was a human being who was said to be a type of the Messiah in that he was both king and priest. When the book of Hebrews mentions that he had no genealogy, no father or mother, the main point of the author of Hebrews is that there is no record of a genealogy for Melchizedek, no mention of a father or a mother. It does not say that he did not have one, only that there's no record of it. The point Hebrews is making is that the correct genealogy was vital for the Levitical priesthood. Unless one could prove that he was a descendant of Aaron, he could not serve as a priest under Levitical law. However, the Melchizedekian priesthood was not based upon descent, but it was based strictly on divine appointment. When Hebrews states neither beginning nor end, it does not say he did not have one. It just means that there was no beginning or end of his priesthood in the biblical record. The typology being drawn is that of a continuous priesthood, as is the case with Jesus. So, Melchizedek was simply a good dude living a righteous life, right? Let me tell you what I believe. I have no idea.
Well, you can't say that he's Shem because he does have a genealogy there.
That's a good point. Yeah. You know, the Jews have to come up with something that doesn't include anything to do with Jesus because they don't believe in Jesus. So Shem has to be about the only answer they can come up with. So there you go. Are you more enlightened now than you were 15 minutes ago? I got to hurry. Number 3, something we do know is that Abram tithed. Genesis 14:19, and he blessed him and said, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hands." And Abram gave him a tenth of everything. Now, every once in a while, I'll hear someone say tithing is Old Testament. In the New Testament, we're no longer under the law of Moses. So this idea that we have to tithe, that this is really important, is not a thing. The people who hold this belief are showing their incredible ignorance concerning the Bible. This passage is one reason. The law of Moses doesn't exist yet. There is no law of Moses at this point. It's 600 years away. Yet we see Abram God's chosen vessel for his new people, tithing. And he's doing this out of thanks and celebration and honor for what God helped him to accomplish with this battle. It's not something Abraham did grudgingly, but willingly, in gratitude for what God had done. And he's not the only one. At one point in Jacob's life, he's not committed himself to Yahweh yet. Remember, you're not born into serving God. You have to do it yourself. So, as many of us do, he begins to bargain with Yahweh. This is Genesis 28, verse 20. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, he's making a deal. So I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. It's obviously he's not his God right now. And this stone, which I have set up for a pillar, shall be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give a full tenth to you. What's a full tenth? A tithe. Okay, I'm not tithing yet. You're not my God. But if you become my God, I'm going to tithe. Again, hundreds of years before the law of Moses was established. Tithing to Yahweh seems to be a fairly normal practice. And just so you know, Jesus taught tithing too. I don't know how people overlook this. Matthew 23:23. He's talking to the Pharisees. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law, you Pharisees, hypocrites? For you are careful to tithe even the tiniest income from your herb gardens, but you ignore the more important aspects of the law, justice, mercy, and faith. You should tithe, Jesus says. You should tithe, yes, but don't neglect the more important things. Tithing is a normal part of the lives of those who claim Yahweh as their God. Let's finish. Verse 21. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the persons, but take the goods for yourself. Okay, the spoils of war. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up my hand to the Lord, God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, that I would not take a thread or a sandal strap or anything that is yours, lest you should say, I made Abraham rich. I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten, and the share of the men who went with me. Let Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre take their share. Number 4, Abram gives glory to God alone. King of Sodom, king of the most wicked city on the earth, I want nothing to do with your gifts. I want nothing to do with your money. Abraham is showing great wisdom here. He knows from where his blessings flow, and it ain't from Sodom. Boy, is that a lesson for us today in America. Your blessings don't flow from Sodom, folks. Us Americans need to learn that. Our blessings do not flow from Sodom. They flow from the Lord. Abram's not going to be a bought man. He doesn't want to be in debt to a man like the king of Sodom, because that marker is going to be called in at some point, right? I mean, Abram has just proved that he and his God are the most powerful nation on the face of the earth. Wouldn't it be handy for the king of Sodom to have somebody like that in his back pocket? Abraham sees through it all. If he takes this bribe, everybody's going to think that Abraham is doing the bidding of Sodom. And that is not who Abram is. Abram is making a declaration that he serves God and God alone. Best decision he ever made. He made some mistakes, but man, this was a wise one. Abram made this a big part of his life, and it is and these last two things, tithing and God alone, are two wonderful examples for us to follow. Let me turn this off. Questions, comments?